Welcome to the Encore Audio Archives YouTube channel. I'm Taper Dave, and this is my channel. I've uploaded hundreds of talks here that I've recorded at meetings in West LA, and I've also recorded conventions starting in 2013. I've got a bunch of those up. And Walt and Mary Murray, the original owners of Encore Audio Archives, started the company in the 80s, and Walt recorded Joe and Charlie's and a bunch of stuff down in Vista, California. My sobriety date is June 20th of 1994. I hope you find something you like, so please like and subscribe to my channel and comment down below. If you want to hear something that I don't have or that you don't see, I'll see that I get it. Anyways, take care and have a great day if you want to.
Hi, my name's Carol Thornton, and I'm a very grateful and enthusiastic member of Al-Anon. I love it. It's not irreverence, it's spiritual. Because I hang out at meetings where they laugh and have fun and talk spiritual, which is dirty, and I found a home, you know. I've always felt at home in Al-Anon. And this place is very special to me because at every one of these tables I have somebody that I know better than others in my love relative family. You are all my love relatives. You know me better than my blood relatives. They still don't understand me. And my home group called me Crazy Carol for a long time. And I earned that name because I got to learn to think kinky going to open AA meetings. I was just thinking, I attended my first Al-Anon meeting in La Habra, California on a Thursday night. And the very next day, the lady who called on me and became my first sponsor in Al-Anon, and we're the best of friends today, took me to an open speaker meeting in La Habra, California, and she dusted off a chair next to the kitchen, and she said, "This is where you're going to be every Friday night." And that's where I was. And the first thing she told me is, "I want you to open your eyes and look at all the beauty before you." And you see, I see that today. Every person in this room buffs up real nice. And you see, she said, "I want you to take a look at the people and the eyes and the laughter and the hugging and the kissing. And then I want you to close your eyes and I want you to think of all the alcoholics in this room at the height of their disease and all the Al-Anons at the height of theirs. There wouldn't be a jail to hold us." And it's true. You see, none of us look the way we were. And God, I'm grateful. I have before and after pictures, and those of us that went to dinner last night got to see them. And I see tons of people that I don't get to see on a regular basis, like Jack and his wife, and all my love relatives that have just guided me through the years, and all the lovely, lovely AA ladies. I went to the AA meeting yesterday at the marathons because they started first, always. I don't know what's wrong with us. We always start late. But I went there, and I had a magnificent time because I fell in love with the two leaders, of course. They just were classy ladies, and they just really, it was just rolling on the floor. And I only got to be in there about 20 minutes. But I want to tell you how square I was when I first got to Al-Anon. I have a lot of lovely AA ladies in my life, and men. And that would have never happened. And when the book Happy Hooker came out, I got 5 copies from different people, all in Alcoholics Anonymous. And let me tell you, I didn't know it was supposed to be fun. No one ever told me that. And you see, they have a great deal to do with my being up here today. This bumblebee on my shoulder is from a lady in Alcoholics Anonymous who had 31 years of sobriety when she passed away. And she's with me today because she taught me a lot about love and a lot about convention work. And I want you to know that I probably hold the record for changing clothes. I not only left the business meeting at 20 minutes to 12, I ran all the way with a bad back, and I ran and I jumped in the shower and got dressed and got all buffed up, and here I are And see, I made it fine, you see, in God's time. I knew I had to be at that meeting because I wanted to tell this committee how very important it is to continue on, you know, and to grow. And you will grow. You will grow in numbers. See, and we all got to start somewhere. My first convention in Al-Anon, I was in charge of the toilet paper in the lobby restroom. And see how far I've grown? I'm in Santa Barbara. I'd like to tell you a little bit about how I am so lucky to have married somebody whose drinking bothered me enough to get me to the program of Al-Anon. I'm an Army brat. I was born Al-Anon. That's born responsible for everybody else's business but yours. And I have 5 brothers, and I was responsible for them, and some are older, some are younger, and I had 10 years later, a beautiful, beautiful little sister came along, and she was everything that I ever wanted to be. I was always tall, gawky, ugly, felt ugly, and didn't like being a girl. And that followed me all through my life. And I never knew any of those things until I did a written 4th step using the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous and the 4-column inventory, which was necessary for my growth. And if you don't like it, you can report me to New York because they can't throw me out of Al-Anon. Each person here is an individual, and I think that we have to find whatever we need to grow. And that was necessary for me. And I urge anyone that I am fortunate enough to sponsor today to use the tools that are offered. You know, go for it. Go for the whole thing. It has given me labels to share with you today. But when Jeannie talked about moving, I hated moving. That I discovered in my inventory. My father was in the service. He never once came home and said, "Carol, would you like to move to Washington or Oklahoma or New York or Austria or any of those places?" He just came home and we packed and we moved. And I hated being the new girl in school. I hated being the tallest. I was always the last one in line for everything. And I thought boys had more fun, and I grew up thinking my dad didn't like me because I was a girl. And so I want you to know that I can do almost anything that my brothers can. I can whistle with my fingers. I call the cabs in our house. And I get to do all things shoot, be begun, and I can play basketball. I was on a championship basketball, and I love to swim. I was in the AAU swimming until I started smoking, you know, and all these marvelous things because my brothers did it. And I didn't feel like a girl, and I didn't like girl clothes, and lo and behold, when we moved to New York and into Long Island, my dad stuck me in a convent school. I thought I was being punished. He wanted me to become a lady, and I thought he was punishing me because none of my brothers had to go to parochial school. My little sister didn't have to go to parochial school. My parents aren't even Catholic, and I spent a lot of time and a lot of weekends in that school with a nun who today, because of this program and because we've kept in contact, spent her 50th Jubilee with Dick and I and in our home. And it was a real experience. Because of that wonderful teacher, I did not chew gum till I was 45 years old. I chewed gum once in about the 5th grade. And she invited me to the head of the class and asked me to take a bite of this GI soap. I think it was called Fel's Naphtha. Most of you are too young to remember that, but there are a few of us vintage age that do. And chew it and swallow it. And let me tell you, I still only chew half a stick at a time. But I grew up like that, moving, hating it, having to do the ironing. You know, I used to think, by God, when I get married, I ain't ever going to iron. You know, I love to iron. That's real. I even iron for my sponsor. In retrospect, I tell her she hates it, I love it. But anyway, I grew up that way. The girls got to do all the preparing of the food in our house. I still hate to peel potatoes. And one of my wedding gifts in Al-Anon, someone who remembered my story sent me an automatic potato peeler. And it's just marvelous, the things that we get to do. But anyway, I grew up hating all that stuff. And my dad had real strict rules. You know, I had to be in at 9 o'clock till I was 16 years old. And I thought that was terrible, you know. And I had a very heavy conscience. I had, by this time, of course, converted to Catholicism. I am not a cradle Catholic, and I think sometimes converting is worse. But anyway, it gave me even more of a conscience into black and white and nothing in the gray area. I knew right from wrong, and I heard someone say the other day, you know, those little bitty sins, the venial ones, there was a long list of those, and the mortal ones were just unforgivable. But that's how I grew up. And I didn't like being who I was, and I didn't even know that. But anyway, at 16, we were back in the United States, and we were up in Northern California, and I was out of school by that time and working on this Army base where my father was stationed, and I met the God of my understanding. He was marvelous, just like all alcoholics are. Let me tell you, I haven't met one drunk or sober that I did not like, yet. And that's true. He was everything a girl would want, like me, you know, because I thought ugly. He was tall, good-looking, blue eyes, a lot of fun, and he was my best friend. God, I could just tell that man anything. And it took me 22 and a half years of marriage to learn not to do that, because when it's used against you, it never sounds the same. But anyway, I just thought he was marvelous. His initials were O-N-E, and he told me he was number one, and he immediately became the God of my understanding. For 24 and a half years, 26 if you count the engagement, and I count every minute, I did everything he ever asked me to do. I never went to the beauty shop unless he told me. He dressed me. He picked out my clothes. He did not want to have any children for 4 years. I have 4. And they're all mine. They're all those makeup kids. I don't know how many of you remember, but I could almost call mine Jim Beam, Coors, Lucky Lager, and Wild Turkey. All those marvelous games that Gene talked about, you know. You sleep with them and you don't sleep with them, and you get on the couch and you get off the couch, and you do all these things. But I want to tell you that I don't know how these young girls come into Al-Anon today. You know, it's like I was not shopping at Bullock's and decided to come to Al-Anon, I can tell you that. But I see them come in here younger and younger, and I think, God, Carol, where were you? Well, I'll tell you where I was. I was into someone else's life. I didn't have a life of my own. I was his wife. I was a respected member of the community. My family just thought I was wonderful. They thought he was wonderful. And he is and was wonderful, because when I wonder why I stayed for the good times. If they were all bad, I would not have stayed, believe me. There are lots of things that go with drinking in the home. Lots and lots of things. Bad checks go with drinking. Checks to the liquor store have a magic shoot. They go, and they're paid on time. Checks to the grocery store and the utility companies sometimes have a snag. And even today, this many years later, I can be in the market and see someone being called into the office by a manager, and, you know, my heart hurts because I know where they're going, you know, and I know what's going to happen. And I know that we do it over and over and over and over again until somehow, some way, we find a place for us, and this is it. But physical abuse sometimes go with drinking. And I can tell you this from my inventory. The physical abuse in our house was a direct result of my mouth and lack of knowledge. I did not know that I was dealing with a disease, and my disease was far more progressive than his. I have no quarrel with being sicker than the alcoholic. In fact, I love it. At least they have an excuse. I would like to tell you that I was drunk when I did all the things that I did, but I will tell you this much. If drinking would have made me short, blonde, and voluptuous the way I've always wanted to be, I would have been a drunk. I gave it my best shot. I drank with him, at him, against him, before him, trying to get drunk so that he would have to take care of me instead of vice versa. And I'll tell you what they do. They just simply take you home, dump you, and go on with the business of drinking. And I did not know that. I never ever took a look at the drinking. I always thought it was something I did or didn't do. When she read Understanding Ourselves, that's every Al-Anon story, and actually is every alcoholic story. I don't think the feelings are any different. I found that in open AA meetings. They were wonderful to me because they identified so many things that I didn't know were going on in my home. Sometimes child abuse goes with drinking, and that's most unfortunate because it sometimes leaves really bad scars. But I can tell you this, girls are much smarter than boys, at least they were in my house. The girls never bothered their daddy. I did. They never went in and changed the TV channel when he passed out, but I did. And they never waited up for him, and the minute they heard our car coming down the driveway, and I can still tell our car, even today, you never lose that Elleny's ear, you know. That and the sound of opening cans. I found that out even in the AA meeting yesterday. I popped my can and everybody looked. It was a test. I just love it. But I'll tell you, the minute the doorknob turned, my mouth started. And I was so sarcastic. I had misused my gift of a sense of humor all my life as sarcasm. And I know that sarcasm is something that tears the flesh from the body. I think that it's worse than physical abuse any day of the week, because I think that, you know, you can't, once it's said, it doesn't come back. And you can't take it back, you know, you can't make it better. I'm glad to know, and I learned that in AA meetings, that a lot of that stuff that went on in my home was in blackout drinking. I knew nothing about blackout drinking. I thought I was nuts. Because, you know, in the morning, he would get up, shower and shave and sing in the shower. And I would be in that bedroom, and I thought, if I had a gun, I'd shoot that sucker's head right off his shoulders. I said, how can he be happy after what happened last night? And I would say, do you know what you did last night? And he'd say, Carol, you have such a filthy mind. And I got so I thought I did. I thought, maybe I imagined it, you know? I don't know. And years later, I can remember going to an attorney, one of the few times I went, and my daughter, then married in 23, she was with me, and I had just come out of the hospital for some surgery on a leg. I never went for my head. You know, Al-Anons don't have much self-worth. They never turn themselves into the nut ward. You know, we go crazy at home. It's cheaper. Because they might need something, you see. That costs money. That's how we are, you see. I heard someone say that the holes in our head, the horns in our head match the holes in theirs, or vice versa, and I think that's true, you know. We don't get them by accident. We're lucky, and don't you forget it. We are lucky, because look where we are today. But it was just, I lost my train of thought, but I'll be right back, I think. God, I just look at you and I think, oh, what miracles we are. Just what absolute miracles, you know. God loves us just so much. He also thinks we're cute. My God also smokes. I don't know about yours. He's trying to quit, but so far he hasn't done so. But that's the God of my understanding and not yours. But a lot of those things that went on in that home, I know today were a result of my using my mouth against something that I didn't know was happening. I never ever took a look at the drinking. I just thought, well, maybe if I were a better mother. So, of course, I became a perfect mother. Maybe if I was a better cook. So, of course, we become better cooks and bakers and candlestick makers. Al-Anons can fix anything. Cars, roofs, toilets, sinks. Doesn't matter what it is. The only thing we can't fix is the one thing that we care the most about, and that's the person with the drinking problem. Because if we could fix it, we'd still be out there trying one more time. I'd like to tell you, we went to marriage counseling for our marriage, and I'll tell you how sick I was. He said, since you think we have the problem, then you go. And I did. He drove me and waited in the driveway. Made sense to me, except the priest said, you know, Carol, I don't know how to tell you this, but it takes two. Just like how many times have we asked him, how many have you had? Just two. You know how many it takes to play those games in the house? Two. That's all it takes, and when one of us quits playing, it ain't no fun, you see. When someone quits playing, and I believe the one with the knowledge gets to stop first. Whoever gets to the program first gets to stop playing the games. Therefore, it's no fun, you see, because they say that the alcoholic doesn't like change. Al-Anons don't like change. We also don't like to volunteer, You don't see 40 hands. I bet if I asked today who would like to be secretary of this group next week, there wouldn't a hand be up in this room. I can tell you what I learned in Al-Anon. If you don't grow, you'll go. And you'll go back to the streets, to your route, and you'll find another one. Because there are lots of them out there. Lots and lots and lots. And the grass is not greener on the other side. I've seen lots of my friends come and go. But I save them a seat. And I don't care which program they go to. I'm proud whether they're an alcoholic or an Al-Anon, because there's some hope here for all of us. But anyway, that's the way I live my life. Now I want to tell you about the God of my understanding. I thought he was punishing me for years. First of all, I ran away to get married at 18 because I was pregnant, and you know God doesn't like that. And so that's why he was punishing me. 2 of those 4 children are crippled children, poster kids for California. And I thought God was punishing me because of that. And you see, he don't work that way. God don't punish me. I'm my own worst judge. I do all the judging. He doesn't do any judging. He's my lover. He loves me whether I'm naughty or nice, whether I talk nice or talk naughty, as some people say. You would think that some of us, the 4-letter words never come out of our mouth. I learned to say 4-letter words looking in a mirror, because that was one of my assignments in Al-Anon. 4-letter words had lots of power in my house. They were fighting words, because good Catholics didn't listen to that kind of drivel. But you see, they were games. He knew the minute he started that I never failed to react to that word, you see. Some of us come to this program and we think 4-letter words are cook, bake, love, clean, pray, walk, talk. We don't release those things and we don't give them up, because we were wives and mothers long before we got to be here, long before we got to Al-Anon. We just make better wives and mothers after we get here. I think that's true of all of us. I see Gwen down there, and Gwen's got an Alatot. We watched her come in. I watched those 2 young ladies come in, and they're so special, all that. They go back a long way. And God, I was at Ruby and Milton's 20th anniversary, and that was real special. And they said it wouldn't last. I don't know how to tell you how I got here, but I'll tell you how crazy I was one time. And not one time, but I'll just tell you of one time. Along with drinking, there are sometimes other ladies in your life. And I did not like that. It did a terrible, terrible job on my feelings of being feminine and being a woman. I felt less than. I never felt feminine from the first incident that had happened, but I had chosen to block it out of my mind for years. And I know that that too is a part of the disease, and I can accept that today, because I've done a lot of writing on the sex inventory and a lot of sharing with my sponsor, and I don't have any big dark secrets. My life's an open book today, and I love it. But I'll tell you how I felt about other women being in my marriage. I learned in Alcoholics Anonymous open meetings that they were usually lower companions, and that helped. That helped, you see. It helped me to know that that's just ordinary behavior for people who drink. Not all of them. God didn't make any of us alike. There are all kinds of alcoholics, there are all kinds of Al-Anons, and all kinds of Alateens. And, Elsa C. says it best: if God made 2 of us alike, one of us would be unnecessary. And I think that we're all different, but we all share the same feelings. I knew my husband's pattern because when he checked into a motel, he used his best friend's name. I thought that was cute. I've never told him either. Isn't that nice? But one time when I did look for him, and I only went out looking twice, this was the second time, he had called, and I wanted him home with the money that he had gotten as a bonus. He was one of the leading salesman for a large steel company in the United States, and he was the top of his field, and I wanted that. And so I called this motel, and I gave him an hour to come home. I said, if you do not arrive, I am coming after you. And of course, I was one day out of St. Jude's. I had about 200 stitches in one leg, and I was very dressed. I had 2 little ponytails here and a caftan robe that I had to wear. And I conned my 17-year-old son and another couple into taking me to that motel an hour and 1 minute later. And they said, we'll take you if you don't go in. I said, oh, I would never go in. Another lie. I knocked at the door, and he made the mistake of opening. It was about 2:30 in the afternoon, and they were both naked, probably just in from the pool. Who knows? But I want to tell you how I reacted. I made a hole this big in the bathroom door of that motel where the lady had run in and locked it, and I don't know why she would run from me. I threw her wig out in the middle of Whittier Boulevard. I stole her purse and took it to the police station because I knew her husband was a policeman in another town. Now, if you think that's bad, my husband did not know she was wearing a wig. Not only that, 1 hour after that incident, I was back at the bar having a drink with them. Wasn't that nice? And I sat there, and this lady came up, and she said, I really want to thank you for not calling my husband. And I said, I wouldn't dream of it. And my husband said something that had really kind of ticked me off. He said, there's one thing about my wife, she's a good Christian. And I want to tell you how I took my glass and I popped it underneath the bar and smashed it, and I had all this jagged glass in my hand, and I swung on him. And the only person that got cut was right here. And God, when she saw that blood, she got so excited, and I just went home, and I called a friend who was a nurse, and she came and patched me up because I couldn't go back to St. Jude's. What would I tell those nuns? You can only lie so much, you know. And I had been there several times before, so I certainly didn't want to go back for a wrist or hand cut like that, so I took care of it. And we went on. We started over again and over and over and over, and we tried it all. We went to motels every so often to keep the romance in our marriage, and we also went out every Friday night drinking. I didn't know that you could eat before 12. I got to Al-Anon, and I found people who eat at 5, just like I did as a kid, you know, 5 and 6 o'clock's dinner time. And I thought, God, how marvelous. All those years I thought nobody ate till 12. He used to say, well, it's because it's Friday, and, you know, who wants to eat fish? Well, you know, we ate at midnight, and it was always lobster or some such nonsense. You know, we were still playing the same game, you know. I just didn't know. And we went out on Friday night whether we could afford it or not. That's how important it was. Because my husband would say, God, I could be all these things if I didn't have all those kids. And right away I thought, oh, what have I done? You know, the doctor once said, you don't get pregnant by yourself. I said, really? You know, I didn't know. You know, whatever he said, I believed. And then I got to that meeting in Al-Anon where I found out, how do you tell when they're lying? You check and see if their lips are moving. It's simple, you see? Sometimes we have to check ourselves, you know. I lied a lot, cheated a lot. When I got to Al-Anon, that little booklet that says, the wife of an alcoholic will blah, 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 said all these things that we do, I said to my sponsor, I've done everything but cheat. And she said, why didn't you do that? And I said, I didn't think I could. Because I had a friend who said, if you are looking for the knight on the white horse, carry a big shovel. So that's kind of the way our life was. And I want to tell you that driving to Santa Barbara yesterday was a real experience for me. I drove by myself so that I could see where I had been 18 years ago. When we came down this road to go to La Habra, I didn't even see the ocean. I was so busy watching the driving. You know, have you ever been behind someone on a freeway and you see her going and him going and her going and him going and the fist going and all this stuff, and I think, God, I hope they make it to the program. I drove early yesterday morning, and I got to go and see all the scenery all the way up here, and it was absolutely magnificent, just the way it was 18 years ago, I'm sure. But I wanted to see what I had missed, like my friend Francie got to see the place where she might have stayed as a bride if they'd had room here. But there was no room here for you, Francie, so you got to stay on the other side of town or up the hill or someplace. But I got to relive all those feelings. Because I learned to drive in Al-Anon, you see, I learned that I could drive a car once I had insurance. And that's interesting, too. That's a whole other story. I didn't know why I didn't like to drive. I couldn't drive at all before I got to Al-Anon, and I found a job right across the street from my house at a church. I knew this Lutheran church would never hire a Catholic. And I am the only certified parish secretary that the American Lutheran Church has that's a Catholic. They have now added that little block to the certification papers with name your religion. But I loved it. It was a safe place to work. And there were lots of people in trouble. And where else could an Al-Anon be of service? You know, a pre-Al-Anon is being in somebody else's crap because we don't want to look at ourselves, you know. And, you know, we are bigger cons than any one of the alcoholics. We take jobs that we are never suited for. My God, you just wouldn't believe it. I was women's editor for a newspaper before I came to Southern California. I didn't even know. For years, I thought you had to type in those size columns. That's how much I thought about a newspaper. But we take the jobs, and we do a good job, let me tell you, because we have to. We have to keep our bodies there, whether our mind, no matter where our mind is, you know. I worked at that church 4.5 years before program and 5.5 after to make amends. But I loved it. I tried suicide twice. I'm here to tell you that God don't take junk because he don't make junk. And if he don't want you, you ain't gonna go. So save yourself a trip. I've had the last rites of the church, so when it's my time to go, I don't have to fool around. And I hope to die of natural causes. Just plain old age, and I don't think we ever get old here. So I'll leave it up to God. But I know this. When I woke up in that hospital connected to everything in the room, if someone would have walked in and said, how'd you like to go to Al-Anon, I wouldn't have gone because I wasn't ready, you see. It takes what it takes to get me here. It took what it took. I want to tell you what I looked like when I walked in my first Al-Anon meeting, and I don't remember what happened at my home the night before I got to Al-Anon. Because we were in one more try period, I had decided to move. You see, my husband never ever said, Carol, I'm going to be gone about 14 days. Now, when I'm gone, I don't want you to eat or sleep or have any fun with the kids or go more than 5 feet from the phone because I might call. And so I didn't. I just worried, you see, and wondered. I used to dream of the undertaker calling me and say, I have this body here, and I'd say, wonderful. When I get back from Hawaii, I'll bury it. And terrible, isn't it? But it's ordinary thinking for people like us. It's just plain old ordinary thinking, you know. At our meetings, they come in and they say, I could kill, and we go right on, you know, because those are our kind of feelings, you know. There are lots of people, and I've heard them in AA meetings say, even in my sickest, I wouldn't drink with them. Well, I tell you, I have a lot of Al-Anons I don't want to think with. I don't like their thinking. So I hang out with the groups that are fun because I know how to be sad. I don't need any lessons, but I need lessons in how to live for fun and for free, you see. And that's what I learn here, you know. I need to know how to live in the good times, because I never fail to react right in the bad times. That's just the way we are. That's built in. It's a quality you get before you get got. And that's just the way it is. But I can remember the last thing that I had said to my husband. I had moved from our home 2 blocks away across the street from the church, naturally in a safe 2-bedroom apartment, and I still had 2 teenage boys. My girls had married and were having their family, and they lived away from us. One did, and one lived in the same town. And those boys were about 15 and 16. I have big emotional blackouts in my life that I can't remember big periods. I always love these people who say, well, on June 4th, when I was 3.5 years old, I had this big awakening. And I think, God, I didn't. I don't even remember much of my childhood, and that's okay. My sponsor says if it's necessary, you will. If you don't, you don't. It's just no big deal. But anyway, I remember saying to him, I had moved to this apartment, and of course he had come back to help me move. And I don't know how they find out all this stuff. It's like radar. They never forget a phone number, and they always come home. That's two things to remember. They never forget where to go when they're in trouble. And we don't either, you see. We never forget who to blame for our actions. At least that was my case. And I had not taken a look at the drinking, of course. I can remember my mother-in-law, who I kept, by the way. I did not divorce my mother-in-law. She still spends 3 months out of the year with Dick and I. She's an Alanese mother-in-law, and both of her children are alcoholic. Her daughter is a sober member of Alcoholics Anonymous today in Dallas, and her son, to my knowledge, was sober 2 years ago. And that's all I know, in another state through Alcoholics Anonymous, and I'm grateful for that because it's one of my prayers. I pray for a lot of people's sobriety. I think it's the greatest gift that you can ever be given. You know, it's just absolutely. You know, if you think you're waiting for them to make amends to you, if they're in Alcoholics Anonymous, they have already done so. That's my feeling, because there are so many that never get that gift. And so if you're waiting to be amended to, don't bother. But I remember saying to him, I will never drink with you again. And he said, God, you drink with your father, you drink with your brothers, you drink with your friends, you know. I said, I will never drink with you again. That's the last thing I remember. When I woke up at about 2:30 in the morning, I was covered in blood. I had lost the hearing in one ear. I was black and blue from head to toe, had very few teeth, no glasses, and that's how I arrived at my Al-Anon meeting. And I want you to know that I was whining and sniveling about having to wear dark glasses. And one of those ladies said to me, be grateful that you've got colored glasses. You see, they did not put up with any bullshit from me. No whining, no sniveling. They made me start being grateful right where it starts, in your home group. They did not co-sign any of my crap. And I am so grateful for that, because they made me so aware. I felt at home. I didn't think I looked funny, and they were laughing and clapping and talking spiritual, which you know what I think it is. And they're having such a good time. And I'll tell you what I learned. They told me that night I was not responsible for the drinking in my home. It was the first time I'd ever taken a look at it. I was a lady who didn't have enough sense to come in out of the pain. I loved it. You know, it was familiar. The second thing is, well, I wasn't going to be the cause of it. You know, I wasn't the cause, and I wasn't the cure for his drinking. That had nothing to do with him. That it was right here, in between my ears. That was my biggest enemy. And they told me that if I would get active in Al-Anon and make that my first commitment, that I would begin to be better. And I did. I lost all fear, and I have to tell you, I see this little lady over here, and she reminds me so much of this woman. I've never seen this woman since, and she said to me, you know, Carol, I lived with a lot of physical violence, and I'll tell you what worked for me, because we don't give advice. If anyone's giving you advice in Al-Anon, you got the wrong sponsor. That's my personal opinion, because I don't think that we have the right to tell anyone what to do unless they're sleeping or eating with them. I can tell you that, because we have to follow our heart. Our heart tells us what to do, and that's real important for me. The only thing I tell ladies that I sponsor, and I do not sponsor men, is to call before they shoot. That's it. Yes, I would like them to go to meetings, but they find that out the hard way, you see. And yes, I would like them to do the steps, but they find that out the hard way, too. They either like what they see and see the example of Al-Anon working in their meetings, or they don't. But that's the only rule I have in sponsorship. I don't call them babies, because we are not babies, you know. We've been to hell and back, all of us in this room, with or without, you know, makes no difference. So I don't feel like a baby, and they don't either. I was old when I got here. I was old at 18. You know, and today I'm only 11 and a half. So, yeah, I've got a long way to go, and I don't know what I want to be when I grow up. And it's okay. But this little lady said to me, Carol, what I did with my husband was I waited until he was sobering up and feeling real remorseful And all of you know what that means. They'll promise you anything and give it to you, too. And you start over and over, and that's fine, you know, because everybody has to do it their own way and pace. And she said, I just looked at him and said, just remember, you have to sleep sometime. And I thought, oh, how about that, you know? I knew nothing about ant abuse, and am I ever grateful, you know? Because once years and years and years ago, and today I know that my husband, my first husband, was probably alcoholic long before I met him. But you see, I knew nothing about the disease. But anyway, one time when we were having a large dinner party, because whenever I got angry, he invited a lot of people to our home, and I loved to entertain. And I always performed well. But I can remember sharing with one of my few close friends, who was a registered nurse. I said, God, I just wish he'd go to sleep for a little while. And she said, hell, no problem. I got 2 sleeping pills. Just put them in his potatoes. So I thought, well, that sounds okay. So I did. And I want to tell you, it don't work for them like it does for us. He stayed up 3 days. So I'm grateful that I didn't know. I thought ant abuse was just something you put in their drink, and they got sick, and then they stopped. That's how simple-minded my mind was. And I'm grateful that I knew nothing about that, you see. But I went home after hearing this thing, and I lost all my fear, my first Al-Anon meeting. I went home, I read the One Day at a Time book from cover to cover and thought they were looking in my bedroom window when they wrote it. And I identified with every single page, and I still do. I went home and I waited, and my turn, my chance came. It always does. And I said to him, I looked him right in the eye, and I said, you know, you're never going to touch me again because you got to sleep sometime. And he looked at me, and I had a tool. I had a aluminum baseball bat in my hand, and he became a nervous sleeper. He would be sitting on the couch and start to nod off, you know, and he would jerk and he would look to see where I was. It worked for me. But I got to my first Al-Anon meeting, and that was the most important day of my life. It was August 15th, and I never forget it because in our area we give cakes for birthdays, not because we're perfect, but because we keep coming back regularly to our Al-Anon meetings. And we know where our seat is nailed down, right there. So it just works. And I never want to forget it because it was the beginning of a life that has given me, if I could, in my wildest imagination, and in my One Day at a Time book, I have something that a lady named Janie Yu helped me write years ago. And when I was single for a long time, and she had me write that I would want someone to share my spiritual, emotional, and physical oneness with in marriage. And that stuck in my book, and it's been there, and it's still there. But when I got to Al-Anon, the one thing that my husband was sure of, because he had since become a Catholic and knew that with my conscience I would never divorce. Divorce was a dirty word in my house. My folks had divorced after 30-some years of marriage, and it split the 7 of us. We all took sides, you know. I'm a lady who testified against her own mother, and I have made amends to that lady, and I want to tell you what she said to me, because she's a real loving, beautiful lady at almost 80, and still dances and still fun, and you know she's fun with 7 kids. I thought like telling that to the lady of 9. She's the mother of 9 in Al-Anon up here. We got one in our area with 13 kids, and she's a real winner, let me tell you, too. Doesn't matter, you know, we're home here. But I got to, when I discovered that God was a lover in my life and that he would go with me wherever I chose to take him, I began to live, and I began to laugh. I learned to laugh looking in that same mirror. That was one of my assignments. My first assignment in Al-Anon was to go home and to pretend to be happy at home. And I thought, you don't know. But it worked. I went home and I whistled and I sang as I went about my household tasks. And I remember he'd shout, "You're not happy." And I'd say, "Yeah, I am. Yeah, I am." And I want to tell you this, by pretending, it becomes so. My second assignment was to go home and tell my children that I loved him out loud. I said, well, of course they know I loved him. I've always been the buffer between them and their dad, you know. No, they don't know. I don't care whether they're 1, 2, 3, 60, or 80. They do not know. They do not know that you love them unless you verbally tell them. And again, by verbalizing it and saying it on a regular basis, I believed it and they believed it, you know. My boys used to, when they were ready to go out, I always said to them the same thing that I'd heard my mother say: keep your hands in your pocket and your fly zipped and you won't get in trouble. And when I quit saying that, I said, just remember that I love you, no matter what. And see, it began to heal me, and it began to heal them. And being loving is the only answer to feeling unwanted and loved and alone, you know, is a room full of people and love. And that's the way I think, and that's the way I believe. But anyway, she would give me these little assignments. In my first 30 days in Al-Anon, they needed a secretary at our group because my sponsor was the secretary, and since she said any volunteers for secretary, and of course not a hand went up, and she threw the key in the middle of the table and said, this is your key to your meeting. If you choose not to be of service, then the meeting will close. And I raised my hand and I said, what does the secretary do? And she said, not much. She said, this is in the olden days. She said, you get to come early. She said, you get to come early, you get to open up, you get to set up, you get to make the coffee, you get to collect the money, you get to get the leaders and speakers, and you get to close. Now, in my 30 days in Al-Anon, my first 30 days, I went to 45 Al-Anon meetings, and I didn't have a car at my disposal. I had someone at home who had lost the choice of drinking. He got day and night mixed up. He stayed up all night and slept all day while I worked, because in that short period of time, you see, he had gone from being the top of his field one more time to being unemployable. And it is not fun to watch. Alcoholism is a fatal disease. They do not want to be what they become. None of them. And we too soon forget about that. And let me tell you, it's not nice to get to watch somebody you love become someone you hate. And that's what Al-Anon has done for me. I no longer hate that man, never did. And let me tell you, you can't hate him unless you love him, because it's the same emotion. I really believe that. But I became so busy, and a lot of my friends now, and I wouldn't pick me up at home, only my sponsor. She was the only one who had guts enough to come by my house. And you see, I know this. The alcoholic, when they are drinking, and that's the only, when they are drinking, and you're living with someone with a drinking problem, they never bother or hurt anyone but the ones they love the best. They just don't. Even in sobriety, they don't. And that's true, for me anyway. But I went to all those meetings, and I'd heard all these things, and I heard, oh, God, have you heard so-and-so? Have you heard Winnie? Have you heard Elsa? Have you heard this? And I thought, there's my chance. I will get to be secretary, and I'll get to get all the leaders and ask all these people. And for one solid year, Carol was responsible. I was responsible for that meeting every Thursday night. I never missed a meeting, and I never missed an opportunity to be there. And I got to hear all the wonderful people in this program right off the bat. I mean, they go to any lengths to come and bring us meetings, and I really believe that. And I got to hear all that my first year. And in that first 30 days, she said, Carol, next week you're going to Fullerton and you're going to share on a panel. And I said, I can't do that. And she said, what do you know today? And I said, not much. She said, has your home life changed? And I said, well, sure, but. She said, no buts, just tell them. All you can tell those ladies and men is how your home life has changed this 30 days. That's all you know. You don't know nothing else. And I went, and I shared. I'm not a public speaker. I'm a sharer. I can share only what's happened to me and how it works for me. And it works wonderful for me. When I discovered that I could take God wherever I went, God and I got a divorce. It was not a friendly suit, because first we had to find him. And he knew exactly what I needed. You see, he did not want the divorce. But I was able to, it was the only decision that I had ever made. You see, I no longer was in charge. They did not say love, honor, and obey and change that sucker. They didn't say that. You know, they just didn't. And so I knew that I did not have the right to make him into something he did not want to be, because he had had the opportunity of going to Alcoholics Anonymous, and to save our marriage. That's what he told me. And he went also on a court card. It took me 3 years to figure that out, but that's because I'm slow. And he went and decided it was not for him. And so I was able to make that decision. I didn't need anyone's approval. I didn't tell my family or my folks, just my children. And the priest, you know. Of course, I had to have his approval. I was still into that. But anyway, I did that. And then it was really fun. God and I got to go everywhere. We got to go for food stamps, and that was interesting because I was a very proud and snobbish woman, and I thought, what's a good mother, wife like you doing in a place like that? It was learning to stand on my own 2 feet. But I also have to tell you, if I'd have seen him in the road that day, I'd have run over him twice. I can remember those feelings. We got to go to court a lot for garnishment of wages and back taxes, and that's another story in itself. Let me tell you something about the IRS. Sometimes it even slops over in sobriety, and I don't think we need the mafia with the IRS. But anyway, God went with me all those places, and he was always with me. And I stayed single in Al-Anon 7.5 years, and everywhere I went, people asked me the same thing. How come you still come to Al-Anon when you don't have the problem? I said, because I discovered the problem. It's me and my thinking, you see. I can no longer blame him for the things that had happened. I was so sick and so inadequate and void of all those feelings long before I met the man that had the drinking problem and who got me here. And I would have had this difficulty in any marriage I got. I was simply destined and lucky and fortunate and chosen to get an alcoholic. And I feel that way today. I am grateful that he's sober. I'm grateful he lives in another state. And this is honest up here, let me tell you. But I helped start a 12-step panel that was very popular in Southern California for a while, and the miracle of that is that it's a love panel. The 5 of us women traveled all over, and we are still friends today, and that's the miracle. Someone said, you guys don't know much about the steps, but you sure as hell know how to love, and that's a compliment, you see. The finest compliment that I have ever gotten in my 11 years of Al-Anon is that most people, upon meeting me, think that I'm an alcoholic. And I consider that a compliment because I laugh a lot, you see. And laughter heals. Laughter heals better, faster than anything in the world, you know. And we've got it all here. That's a prescription that's free for the taking, you know. You can be as miserable as you want to be. I don't want to be. But I'll tell you, I dated some alcoholics that were not conference approved. And when you get to date when you're in your 40s, that's a whole new ball game, you know. It's just real interesting. But I can tell you this much. Those gentlemen, and they were gentlemen, thank God. Because, you know, if you haven't dated since you were 16, you're a little out of practice, you know. And so I learned to date in Al-Anon. And I learned to be comfortable being Carol. I learned that success is being happy in my skin. And I could stand before you naked and be comfortable today. And that's because I met a lovely lady named Della who's out in the streets. She's, I think we're saving her seat in AA, so don't get too crowded. But anyway, she gave me an assignment to clean house naked. And from a closet dresser in my first marriage, that's a long way, you see. But when I was comfortable in all the areas of my life, I was comfortable being Carol. I was comfortable being single. I did not get couple-itis every time I went into the Ilano Club or to a potluck or to a Christmas party or to a dance. And I hung out with married people who had children and who had had teenagers, and they were able to walk me through a lot of hard times with those kids. I was able to tell a teenager in another state when he refused help and he had tried to take his life. And I said, you know, son, I love you. No matter what you decide, I love you. And I hung up, you know. And he's a brilliant young man today, not because I'm his mother, but because God took care of him, just like he takes care of all our kids. They each have a God of their understanding. But when I was very comfortable and I was active in the Alateen program over there and knew a lot of Alateens, and a couple of them had met and married, fell in love and were about to get married in the Alateen program, and I was invited to the wedding. And I had, at the time, was dating an ordinary person. Nobody's normal. There's ordinary people who are able to function with the 10 commandments. Maybe if Moses would have said 10 suggested commandments, I would have made it. I don't know. But he didn't. So I have to have the 12 suggested steps. But anyway, when I was comfortable in all those areas, I got to go to that wedding, and I got to find my prince. And if you did not get to meet my prince, this is my husband, Dick Thornton, and he is a gift from God and a direct result of all those. Yeah. He's a sober member of Alcoholics Anonymous, and he's got a year on me, and he's every bit of it to keep up. I got to meet him on the steps of that church. I knew him because of his eyes. We got program eyes. You can almost tell who's done a fourth step and who ain't, who's having a good time and who ain't. And I went up and I gave him a big kiss and said, "Hi, Dick." He said, "Hi, Carol." And I was sharing my life with another Al-Anon. That's tough if she's not working the same kind of program. But anyway, she said, "Where did you meet him?" And I said, "I don't know, but I know him." And I had met Dick and his wife, who was a very staunch member of Al-Anon and who had started a step study over in her area as a result of hearing the panel years ago. And every time we went to Hawthorne or Torrance or that area, Dick and his wife would be there. And so I knew that we knew him. I knew he had lost his wife, but, you know, I was busy. My daughter was having brain surgery at the time on the other side of town and was just busy, you know, how we get. And I said at the reception, I said, you know, as soon as that short, blonde, voluptuous lady that's with him goes to the bathroom, I'm going over and give him my card. And the mother of the bride said, "You wouldn't do that." She said, "You're really shy about that." And I said, "Well, I know I am, but I'm willing to risk." And I never carried a business card, but I had him in my purse that day, and I walked over to him as soon as she went. I knew she had to go sometime, you know. I sat down there and I talked to him and I gave Dick my card and I said, "Dick, if you're ever in La Habra or Whittier, look me up and give me a call." And he said, "Sure," you know, and I went home and I waited. And I want to tell you how my God works. My God made me look so good that day. I had on my best trolling outfit, this beautiful dress. I had been out in the sun and my hair was light and short and I was gorgeous. And Dick has bad eyes. He thought I was much too young for him. And I'm going to get his eyes fixed when he's about 85. But anyway, I went home and waited. I could hardly stand to talk to anybody I sponsored. I wanted him to hang up and get the hell off that phone so he could call, you see. And I worked with one of the members of that panel, BR, and BR said to me one day, "Carol, I'd like you to cancel your trip up north." I was going up north for 5 days. I had a date taking me to the airport and went up there. Now I find out they were both practicing drunk. So anyway, I was all set to go on this big vacation over holiday, and she said, "I don't know why I don't want you to go. I just have funny vibes, and I've never asked you to do anything for me." And let me tell you, I was teachable. I canceled the trip. And I went home, and I did not go out to dinner that night with my boobs Diane. I didn't go to dinner with her or the meeting. I went home and I was in bed about 8:30 reading, and the phone rang, and there was my prince. You know, he called and said, "This is Dick Thornton." And I thought, I know. Because I had before that had to put him in my God box. My sponsor said, "You put him in your God box and you stop waiting for him because you are doing the same thing with Dick Thornton that you did with your husband. You are waiting for someone to make you happy." And happiness is an inside job, and it is not a man or a woman or a kid or anything. It's an inside job. So he called, and of course, being so cunning, powerful, and baffling, he said to me, wanting to know how old I was, he said, "How old are your children?" I said, "How old are you, Dick?" And he said, "I'm 50. I said, "Wonderful. I'm 49. And he asked me to go to dinner. And I got to go to dinner, and I got to date him, and I got to live a day at a time and keep that relationship in today. And I got to fall in love. And I got the most precious gift any woman could have in a second marriage, or third or fourth. I don't care. I have a diamond necklace that only God can see, and me. He gave me a prince. That's a diamond. I never ever wanted to be married again. That's a diamond. he gave me this 11 was a gift from my husband on my 50th birthday. And that's a 10 that never gets a headache. And that's a diamond. I got a man who loves me and who tells me out loud that he loves me. And that's a diamond. When he calls me at 6 and says, I'm going to be 5 minutes late, is there anything that I could bring you? That's a diamond. I got to know that when Dick and I retire, we're going to have a lot of fun because we got to love each other and like each other through a broken hip and a hurt back and gallbladder. He's been through a lot of physical pain, and that's not a diamond, but it certainly gets you them, and it works. We have 13 grandchildren. Those are little bitty diamonds. We have 2 rules in our marriage, actually. We even went for we got engaged. I got my ring on Halloween. How do you like that for a witch? We got to do all the things that young people get to do, you know. I feel 16 up here. I don't know, you know, it just works like that. But we got to get married in this program with over 600 love relatives at our wedding. And when the minister asked who gave this broad marriage, they all said, we do. And there were 16 of our married children there in the wedding party, and part of our love relatives, and 5 of our grandchildren. And we got to go to Maui on our honeymoon, and we got to meet lots of program people that we just re-met in Canada, some of them. And some of them come over here and go to our conventions with us, and that's a diamond. We get to share together, AA and Al-Anon, and that's a diamond. I never ever thought I would have that. I never ever thought that I would be fortunate enough to have a sober member of Alcoholics Anonymous who prays with me on our knees. I never ever told anyone that's what I wanted. That's a diamond. We get to meditate and pray in the morning together, and that's a diamond. Besides that diamond, he also plays the piano, and that's a diamond. We don't babysit for any of our grandchildren. That's a diamond. They have all been married longer than we have, and February 20th of this year, Dick and I will celebrate 4 years of continuous marriage. That's a diamond. When we went for premarital counseling, one of the things Pastor shared, that in marriage, in second marriages or whatever, there are always 2 things that become a problem: children and money, and they come in that order. I put Dick before my children. That's a diamond. Dick puts me before his children, and that's a diamond. We have no secrets in our marriage. When one of our children calls, and they do, when they don't call, they're having fun. You don't have to worry about them. When they call, we do not talk to them on a one-to-one. We have no secrets. It's not this, Mom, can I talk to you in private? No, you cannot talk to me in private. Save us the time. Talk to us together so that I don't keep him up half the night discussing it with him. And that's the way we work our marriage. We put each other before our children, because those kids have to go through whatever they have to go through to get whatever they get, the same as we did. And let me tell you, it's a diamond necklace that only God can give me. And you see, my marriage has top priority in my home, because I've got a God of my understanding who loves me no matter what, and a program, and that is God, you see. And he loves me, and he taught me to love me. He taught me to love you, and I know that he loves each and every one of you. And I learned this: God loves, he knows, and he cares. Nothing this truth can dim, but he gives the very best to those who leave the choice to him. Thank you so much for asking me.
Sorry to interrupt your viewing. Taper Dave here. Just wanted to take a second to ask you to like and subscribe to my channel. Let me know if you like what you're listening. I've got some very good talks here, and this one's a great one. Just curious, do you think this is better than Zoom? Tell me what you think. Okay, this is how I prepare my drone for launching. I like to do it inside the cab of my truck so I'm not standing outside in the weather. To install the joysticks for control, up and down, right and left, powered on. I have an Android phone that I use to connect it to the drone with. And it's actually controlled through the iPhone, through an app. Oops, wrong way. It's actually controlled through the iPhone, or through this Android phone, through the app. It's actually controlled through the Android phone, through an app, and you connect it through this short connection right here.
Remote control connected.
Remote control's connected. So I pull out the drone. I have to extend the legs. Long legs extended first, then the short legs. Remove the gimbal protector. Set that aside, then power it on one short burst, then one long burst. I lay it down. So I have to go to calibrate. So the drone's not connected yet. It shows you here as this drone gets disconnected, even though the remote's powered on. So the drone has to establish it's connected. So I go into the app to calibration mode. First I'll calibrate the remote controller. Start calibration. Out, in, out, in, up, down, and then this little wheel is to control the gimbal. So it's calibrated. Go to gimbal calibration, start calibration, and then it calibrates the gimbal. And if that shows up, the gimbal's moving all over the place. Changes, you can see it on the video. And I'm calibrated to take off. It's acquired 7 satellites at the moment. There are 26 satellites up in the sky, which it has to acquire before you can take off. So it's connected. It's got enough satellites. This is white. I can go to press this little arrow button, swipe right to take off, and it would start the motors if I slid this to the right. But I'll wait till I get outside. Don't want to do it inside.